Good evening and welcome to the Cabinet of the 21st of November. Before we move to the formal agenda, I wanted to give a 30-second update on the issue of gun, wharf and rack, just to let Cabinet colleagues know that effectively work continues as to the options available to us as a council. Obviously, it's a disappointing set of circumstances we find ourselves in, out of the control of everyone here. Some builders in the 1970s have probably got a lot to answer for, both here and elsewhere. We're getting the right information so we can take some decisions moving forward and look at those final options available to us. And of course, we'll look at those as a Cabinet in due course and we'll keep everybody informed. I want to thank you as a Cabinet. You've been very flexible in your work. Richard, through you, I want to thank the whole staff. They've been tremendous, both the small handful of staff who remain on site, keeping us safe, but also the rest of the Medway Council team. And I want to thank the public for everything that they've done in recognising where we are, and our partners, many of whom have picked up the phone and said, if you need a space, if you need a support, including, I pay on tribute my record of thanks to Jeremy Kite, actually, who picked up the phone and said, of course, because of the circumstances they found at the Orchard Theatre. So I know some of Medway's officers have been speaking directly to Dartford officers there as well. So we will keep everybody informed, but just to give that information at the start of tonight's meeting. Let's move to the formal agenda. We're all here tonight, which is a good thing, so there's no apologies for absence. Are colleagues happy I signed the record of decisions of the previous Cabinet meeting? Thank you very much. Are there any disclosable pecuniary interests or other significant interests? Simon.
Yeah, thank you. Just on item 5 under the capital budget, page 34, Luton Primary is in receipt of a significant capital sum for a new nursery, and I'm the Chair of Governors there.
Thank you very much. As it's a risk, I'll just seek formal advice from the monitoring officer. As it's a retrospective looking back rather than looking forward, Councillor Curry to stay in the room, or... Thank you very much for that clarification. Thank you. Any other declarations? No, that's great. Let's move on to the first substantive item, and that's looking at the revenue budget monitoring for round 2. As has been well documented, as we all know as Cabinet members, this continues to be one of the things at the very front of our minds every single day as a Cabinet, and indeed as a team of 25 working closely with the corporate management team. The headline is positive. We have made progress. We inherited from the previous administration that £17 million gap in the budget. We know that we didn't set that particular budget for this year, but we're dealing with it because the people of Medway chose change on May the 4th. So work has continued at a pace. And I want to thank all of those Cabinet members and indeed officers throughout the Council who are putting in place those management actions to get that budget gap down. But there is still a lot more to do. And we're very clear in this report where progress has been made, where there continues to be some challenges for us as an authority. It's worth saying lots of these challenges are not unique to Medway. I think we've heard a lot across the local government sector, particularly in the run-up to tomorrow's autumn statement. And I will be deeply disappointed if we don't see something positive immediately, not in 1 year or 3 years or 5 years. Local government, both us in Medway, but across the country, across England in particular, needs that support today. So I'll be listening very carefully. And support for the avoidance of doubt is not just allowing us to tax people a little bit more for adult social care. This is real and genuine support. We need that. But you can see the table on page 16 on paragraph 5.1, the raw numbers of where we've moved from. And again, a good set of figures in that previous quarter we're looking at today. The directorates are laid out, and colleagues may wish to speak about their individual portfolios and areas. It's worth recognising again, particularly on some of the pages later on in the report, looking at regeneration, culture and environment. Actually, part of the reason we've closed the gap is actually income generation. So that is about using those services and facilities, encouraging residents, in the case perhaps of the Corn Exchange and the sports centres, to use local and use what is within their community and valued. So I really welcome those increases of income coming to the council. It's worth saying as well at this point, we recognise that as a new administration, we want to get that good advice and guidance. So a session, just the meeting before last, we were meeting with colleagues from SITFA, who are the sector experts in local government when it comes to finance. They're going to be looking at us through a lens of resilience, and we are very committed to listening carefully to their recommendations when they come forward. That's covered in paragraph 11.2, and in 11.3, a specific recognition of additional support from both ADAS and the LGA, looking at those challenging figures that we have, which again I would say are not unique to Medway, but we're dealing with our budget here and now. So I welcome those two sets of services and two sets of support that we're receiving from those external experts. We've had conversations elsewhere about some of the difficult decisions we've had to take. I didn't want to be appearing as a name on this morning because we were taking a tough choice when it came to the Christmas lights, but we did and we are. And I have to say, to get to the point of balancing this budget, we are likely to have to make some more difficult decisions. We know that as a Cabinet. I know those conversations are happening already with Cabinet members and their teams of directors, assistant directors and heads of service to try and get to that point of having that balanced budget, which we are all working hard for. So it's good progress, but there is a lot more to do. I'll pause at that point, colleagues, and again, if individuals wish to speak particularly around their directorate or their political area, I'd be very welcome to hear that. I'll take Teresa first.
Thank you, Vince, and I think it's important to say to the public and to the people around this table, especially our staff, thank you, because I've been so impressed with people's willingness to be open and join in with us in what is a one council approach to the problems that we've got, the problems that we have inherited. And staff are doing their jobs while they're looking in all of the dark corners of the council to find efficiencies, to find savings, to think about whether there's a different way that they could be doing things, and all the time serving the public. In adult social care, we're very challenged, but we are in the whole of the country. There's consensus from the Association of Directors of Adult Social Services, from the Local Government Association, indeed from SITFA themselves, who are helping us make sure we take an independent, very close scrutiny look at the situation we inherited. All of those credible bodies agree that adult social care needs another £4 billion if we are to have the kind of services that our population want and need. But in the context of Medway, we're not big spenders. Actually, we come in very low compared to other parts of the country, but we've got a challenged population. We've got many more people here who are under 65, who are under 25, some of them, with profound disabilities, who need looking after, and that care will be lifelong. So what I can say is that the direction from senior staff and the leadership, I hope that we have shown, is getting into every part of the council. I had the very great pleasure of taking our newly qualified social workers to lunch a couple of weeks ago. And not only were they very happy, feeling supported, feeling that they'd chosen the right job, and every single one of them, by the way, had got 2 or 3 jobs before they chose to come to Medway, they were also absolutely across the need to make decisions that were not just the right decisions for people, but the right decisions for the council, and had gone back to their supervisors to suggest more efficient, different ways of delivering packages of care to the ones that patients and partners and families had wanted. And we're prepared to take on that challenge. So I think that the message is working. Staff are prepared in the context of their big workloads to help us do what we need to do and balance the budget. But more than that, to do it in perpetuity, not just trying to get to the end of the year, throwing our weight around as the previous administration were doing, but actually thinking about the long term and about a serious attitude, an open attitude towards managing the budget. So this report doesn't bring welcome news, but it does bring good news, because some of that work is actually being effective, and we're going to keep on with it in adult social care and in public health, mindful always that the more we do to prevent people getting ill, the less likely they are to need very expensive care in the future.
Thank you very much, Teresa. Tristan?
Thank you very much, Vince, and I welcome this report, and I think many members here and in fact around the country will be aware of the extremely tight financial environment and envelopes in which local councils operate. We are a well-run administration, and it is welcome that we have commissioned external support that, in fact, is used by the government to look at how services are run in a more effective and efficient way. And I look forward to, and certainly my team, but I suspect all teams in the council are looking forward to working with them to see how we can improve our services. So it is worth mentioning that since 2010, of course, we've seen a 91% reduction in direct government grants. And I'm afraid the people who claim that local government finance is in a positive place, and we see some of these people sort of making that message, I'm afraid are living in a fantasy world where, you know, there is significant sums that can be found. We're going to have to make some extremely tough decisions, and I'm hopeful this CIPFA report actually will give us a bit of a narrative, a bit of a history as to some of the decision making made by predecessors and previous individuals and how we've ended up in this situation. You know, 8 months ago, I was sitting in opposition. We've had a very long period of Conservative control of this council, and I think it's really important that a torch is shone upon some of the conduct and behaviours and some of the decision making that has been made that's led us to this point, and I welcome that is coming as well. I also think we do need to be honest and transparent around some of our third parties as well, and some of the decisions we've made financially to support you know, going concerns and some of those that have become a reputational liability to us, where there's ongoing cases with the police and other aspects. And just lastly, of course, the environment that we're in requires budgets across all areas, including in education. And I know I've done a piece of work recently to highlight the fact that the government have botched their own finance arrangement with schools to the tune of 2 million. And I know that my colleagues in the National Education Union are running a big campaign at the moment in Medway to highlight the cuts to schools that have been supported. And, you know, we need all of our politicians, whatever their colour, to be making the case against local government cuts and education cuts, and putting forward a position where we get the money that our services need, because ultimately we all suffer from this. And I just implore people from across all parties and none to keep on making the case for public services, because our officers are the most fantastically hard-working, diligent, engaging individuals, but they are working in a very tough environment, and it's really important that we are here celebrating their work, as we will do over the next couple of weeks and months, and to say that we are, as an organisation, going to go forward. We're going to make these difficult decisions, but we're going to carry, in a positive way, everyone with us. And I just want to, you know, get that message out there that this will be a process that we would work with people on. And I look forward to seeing the results of this and presenting improved budgets in future as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tristan. I've got Nishawa next, please.
Thank you, Vince. And I think just to reflect the comments that colleagues have made, I also welcome the report and, you know, the fact that things are moving in the right direction, which I think is obviously down to a lot of hard work across the organisation and across teams and departments. But I think, as well as recognising some of the challenges that we've faced in local government when it's come to finances, and we're not alone in this, you know, I think that is something that is well reported and documented. So I think people need to understand that wider context. And as part of that, I think it's also really important to look at what's happening more widely. So the pressures that we're seeing at the moment are unlike those that perhaps could have been predicted a year ago, in fairness to perhaps the previous administration. It is difficult to see how some of those challenges have come forward. You know, we had that budget by national government last year, which has created huge pressures across our economy. And as a example, the temporary accommodation burden that the council is currently facing when it comes to those who are at risk of homelessness is significant. It's really significant. And I think in any budget making process, and when we're looking at these figures, we have to be really careful about understanding and recognising that wider context as well. And that's why tomorrow's autumn statement, I think the Chancellor has to really take this seriously, because yes, we will be financially prudent, we will look at things carefully, but that interconnect with national government cannot be dismissed. It is really urgent that they also recognise their role in making some, in helping address some of these wider challenges that we're facing. We're the front line, but they are absolutely also part of this structure, and also how the role that they have played in the decisions that they have made nationally that are leading to these additional pressures that we're now seeing. So I want it to be on the record that we, as a council, we are doing everything we can, but we also need our MPs to step forward and call out their government and also ask them to provide that support where it's needed. These are not, we are not unusual in this. Recently, a letter went from a collection of councils to the Chancellor asking for an increase in housing benefit and local housing allowance, and sort of to unfreeze local housing allowance, which would actually save the public purse money, because the pressures that we're seeing are really high, and I don't want that to be missed when we have this conversation.
Thank you very much indeed, Nashava. Simon.
There we go. Thank you very much. And thank you for just picking up the comments of my colleagues as well. And just honing on a couple of specifics, if I can. One in relation to the planning services and the production of a local plan. Obviously, it's something that our staff are working their socks off at the moment and producing some really amazing stuff to get our local plan through as quickly as we can within the 4 years of our administration at the moment. And that's starting to produce results already in terms of our neighbourhood plans and such like that hard work. But the implications of not having a decent planning system isn't a result of us having poor planning laws or poor planning laws. It's not having a local plan, because that costs us a fortune then in terms of public inquiries and stuff like that. And there are something like about 60% of local authorities across the country in a similar position to us. So the cost to the country as a whole of not having sound planning is just massive, not just here in Medway. And I think that's a reflection not about our planning system, but about the fact that this government and previous governments, right over the austerity period, have cut local government services to the bone, where we don't have enough staff to do the work. And that's at the heart of that planning problem that we've got. And here in Medway, we're resolving that through sheer hard work and grit and determination, which is really welcome. And the other issue it's called investing in your infrastructure. Why do we have such a massive pothole problem and we're having to pay so much money just to repair the holes in the road? Is because year on year, highways authorities across the country have had their budgets cut, and we haven't invested in our infrastructure. And that sound economic sense, any business in the country keeps their business premises in good nick. I mean, that makes sense to anybody. So clearly, the Conservatives don't have a sound business sense in that respect for the country as a whole. And we're suffering the consequences of that, not just us, but authorities across the country. And instead of having good road networks, we're having to patch them up year on year and deal with all the public complaints and the damage to people's vehicles that is a result of that. So this is leading towards sound finances, and that's really welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Simon. Harinder.
Yes, thank you, Vince, and thank you, colleagues. Now, of course, I think every portfolio holder, where they can, will try to bridge the gap with income generation, as you've outlined. That's in no small part, where we've managed to close some of that gap already. But as others have pointed out, that's not going to be enough. It's just simply not going to be enough. And it is because of the pressures that are not just being found internally, but are, as Councillor Khan mentioned, a result of some bad policy, some very, very bad policy. And if you want to have just a simple cursory look at sort of what the cumulative effect of inflation has been since 2010, when I've added it up, it's 55%. You can debate that, you can have a look, and maybe revise it down or up as you wish. But when people are mentioning the 91% figure from the cut from central funding, it's actually worse. It's actually worse than that, because it's not taking into account the inflation. So it really does require more from central government to actually undo some of the mess that they created in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I think that's been a really helpful set of contributions, so thank you for that. Look, we will look on tomorrow afternoon. That's the reality. In this council, regrettably not everybody, but the majority of Medway Council were clear that we had to lobby Jeremy Hunt And I thank the Chief Executive for getting that letter off within 24 hours of the council meeting to make sure it was part of that ongoing consultation and submissions ahead of the statement tomorrow. Nashaba is absolutely right. Districts and boroughs, which is why we weren't a signatory, 75 councils writing explicitly on the issue of homelessness. That's again, as a unitary authority, we've got that pressure as well. And as you can see within the report, we're managing some of that at the moment because there are earmarked reserves. Eventually, those reserves won't be there either. So there are pressures which are being dealt with, which we will have to continue to deal with, and some of the funding we're using today won't necessarily be there tomorrow. And Tristan is right. I know some people are bored of hearing it, but it's the truth. This council has had a 91% cut in its revenue support grant since 2010 under David Cameron's government. That's what we're dealing with. That's a reality. And if that funding had even stayed as cash neutral, if we still had that £85 million that was there in 2010 rather than the £7 million we have now, it doesn't take a mathematician to work out what this sort of report would look like tonight. So, look, we are in a difficult set of circumstances, there's no doubt of that. But where we are with quarter two is a better place than where we were with quarter one. We will continue to work hard on this. We'll look carefully at the advice and guidance and support we get both from SITFA and the LGA and ADAS. I know the Cabinet are working hard on this every single day. I know the senior management team, along with their heads of service and others, continue to prioritise this. So I'll move to the recommendations that we note this report and that we recommend that ongoing work continues to be finally agreed by full council, the budget previous, so we get to that balanced budget which we all need to see. Is that agreed?
Yes, agreed.
Thank you. Let's move on, colleagues, to item 5, the capital budget quarter two monitoring. This is less of a headache, but nevertheless really critically important because we're talking about hundreds of millions of pounds of taxpayers' money. A couple of things just to recognise. In the recommendations, we're doing a bit of tidying up exercise. You'll see there in paragraph 1.3 some small amounts which will be coming out, and we've been clear and transparent as to how they were originally funded. Again, one of the pledges from this administration is that we will be open, honest, transparent and compassionate. That's what was said in everybody's doorsteps, and we've been clear on that, and we continue to be clear on that throughout all of our processes. I won't run through every single item in detail. A couple I want to pick up. I think we're making good progress on the LED lighting. That's important because it's important for our community. And again, that issue of community safety. If you've got poor lighting, that's a real and present issue. So the fact we're making good progress on that, and LED lighting is, of course, something which is financially more sustainable than the previous lighting. The other particular capital scheme I wanted to raise, and Tracy or Adam may wish to comment on this as well, of course, that there is capital funding for the 3 co-ed schemes, which of course, through no fault of our own, through no fault of our schools, is now kind of on a temporary pause because the Department for Education, frankly, doesn't understand the geographical map of Medway and its near districts and boroughs. The response we've had back from the department's officers was pretty disappointing. Obviously, it wasn't for us, it was for the 3 schools, but this council was unanimous in saying that was a really important step to take. So the capital programme remains to support that, but of course, by the nature of it, it's not in a place where it needs to be, because not because of the schools, not because of us, because of, say, Department for Education. I'll pause at that point. Like I say, there is less perhaps focus on this. It's a really important report, and we should recognise that there are dozens and dozens of very good capital programmes continuing day in, day out, on time and on budget, and that's what we would expect to see from this administration. Any questions from any colleagues? Tristan.
Thank you very much, Vince. And I just will, one area of particular interest to me, given my enforcement portfolio includes roads and parking, is just currently I think the announcement in the last couple of days around pothole funding and road capital maintenance. I know Simon and I have been doing some work on that. And it's just worth noting that in 2018, I asked a question at full council to the then Conservative portfolio about the future investment need for roads in Medway, given the cuts that the Conservatives previously made to the road network. And I'll just give you an example. In the 2017, there was 76 miles of roads which were classified in Medway to be in a poor state. And the then Conservative portfolio predicted that by 2027, that would be 128 miles 149 miles of road. So we saw almost a doubling of the road network being in a poor state, or in some ways a doubling of the potential for potholes in Medway. And that has come to pass. I think many of us here travelling on our road network will see that the capital asset that should have been managed since 2010 has been effectively run down. And so when your car goes over a hole in the road, and it does happen, and it's increasingly happening, not just here but elsewhere, I'm afraid that is a direct result of poor decisions that have been made previously. But more importantly, in that answer that was given to me, there was a £1.9 million annual deficit in the budget as it stood then. So when I saw that we were getting an additional £12 million or whatever from the Conservative government last week, I was celebrating from the hills. I thought, wow, they finally acknowledged that we have a pothole problem. Except I'm afraid the devil's in the detail with the Conservatives, as it always is. And it later transpired that it was only £401,000 per year, which I'm afraid, as a proportion of the overall highways budget, is peanuts. And because of the legacy that they have left us, which is a cumulative deficit of around 11–12 million pounds on our roads, I'm not so sure that the public are not being hoodwinked by this announcement. And so it is really important that we just make sure that we are transparent and open with the public about what sort of money is going into our road network as we approach the winter period. And it's really dishonest if people are saying that we have that capital to spend when we actually don't, and it's over a longer period. So I just want to emphasise to residents that we absolutely are focused on repairing our roads, but there isn't some magic pot of £12 million that has suddenly dropped in our lap for this year to improve potholes. And I certainly, unlike Rishi Sunak, will not be promising that no potholes will exist in 12 months' time, because I think, again, that is irresponsible and will not be something I'm sure that we'll be saying. But I just wanted to just emphasise that, you know, the capital projects that we do it also takes into account the assets that we have. And similar to Councillor Curry's comment earlier, we take our road network very seriously, and it's just disappointing that others have made comments around budgets which are, in my view, are not transparent and honest with the public. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Tristan. Before I bring Teresa in, that's absolutely right. You know, in the same way that the 91% figure is not my words, it's the words of Alan Jarrett, the actual facts are very clear on the government's own website. £401,000 this year, £401,000 next year, and then just vagueness, nothing else clear and clarified. Maybe that's because they're not sure who the government will be, of course, by that point. So it's not over £12 million, it's under £500,000 this year, and thank you for raising that. Teresa.
Yes, I think on that, Tristan, and on the things that Simon has raised, and on many of the things we've talked about tonight, although it's really good to see these capital projects, when I saw David Cameron's breezy Etonian confidence walking up Downing Street and watched him being wrapped in ermine today, I see not a new foreign secretary who's going to solve all of our problems, but the architect of austerity. And that, I'm afraid, was hidden under a load of old guff about a big society. He is another Tory politician who's managed to marry money without doing very much else. And here he is raking in some more as an unelected foreign secretary. I think that's a pretty grim legacy, together with the austerity he's left us with. Having said that, I'm hoping that something will come out of the autumn statement tomorrow for adult social care. All of the government's proposed care reforms have been paused. And it's important to say at this point, that has cost us money. The fact that the staff had to prepare for what the reforms were intending to do cost this organisation money. all of that has gone to waste. The reforms have been paused. There's no indication of when anything else will happen. And in the report, we can see that the IT system that we've put in and are now funding ourselves to make sure that we have better ways of putting care packages together and assessing people. The cost burden, the innovation, and all of the work has fallen on our staff because the government have completely failed to bring in the promised reforms to adult social care. So whatever else is going on in the autumn statement tomorrow, I would like to think that there will be some acknowledgement of the trouble and costs that that has caused.
Thank you, Teresa. Any other colleague? Okay, thank you very much for that then. So the recommendations are as per paragraph 1. Are those agreed? Thank you. Let's move on to the next item then, which is the third in the trio of budget-related reports this week, and that's the draft capital and revenue budget for 24-25. And let me say a few bits in opening this particular item. It's clear that the work is underway to deal with yet another huge financial challenge. And we've spoken tonight already about balancing this year's books, and we're on our way to work through the challenge of balancing next year's books ahead of February the 29th. As has been mentioned a few times, some of that may come from tomorrow, but I'm not holding my breath that the autumn statement will be everything we need it to be, or frankly, anything we need it to be. But we will wait and see. And there has been certainly talk of adult social care getting some support. As I say, just allowing us to put up taxes, not support. The people of Medway deserve better than that. One of the things which has been a challenge, as we've spoken about here, and we've certainly spoken about with our 6 pledges around the issue of recruitment and retention. So I'm really pleased that we're looking very carefully at that around a good pay settlement for our staff this year. They deserve that. But actually, as well as deserving it, which they absolutely do, it's important because it will stop us paying out huge sums of money, certain parts of the council, for consultants, locums, temporary staff, agency staff. That's costing taxpayers money, and we've started to get to grips with that. But I think the approach we're taking with pay for the forthcoming year, I think will be helpful with that. And I hope that Employment Matters and the joint committee between employer and trade unions look very carefully at that, and I hope they come up with a settlement which is agreeable. It's going to be challenging choices for us as leaders. That's the reality of it. We've spoken since May the 4th and before May the 4th. We knew the financial circumstances of Medway Council. We knew the financial circumstances of every unitary authority across the country. So we know that there will be some challenging choices to make as we move forward towards the budget setting process that we've started. We want to hear from overview and scrutiny. Lots of us around this table know that is a challenge because of sometimes the circumstances outside of our control. So the local government settlement, which is a fairly important figure for this process, we don't know till almost Christmas Day. So the fact that all 4 scrutiny committees, and this isn't the fault of Medway Council, this is the fault front and centre of DLUC and the Treasury, have got to have those conversations in good faith without a fairly critical piece of information is frustrating, and most of us around this table know that from having sat around that table. We've said publicly we're going to consult, and I'm really pleased that we're talking to the citizens panel. We've committed to do that. We'll be asking them a series of questions around their priorities and views. We will want to do a wider consultation piece for next year when we've got a full municipal year to get on with that. People will also have a chance to raise this next week with the first Medway Matters Live in Reynolds. So if people have got concerns or issues or priorities they want to raise, they'll have an opportunity to raise that as well. Just to turn to some of the specifics, we will be making some changes to council tax discounts. Frankly and bluntly, with our financial situation, if you can afford to have a second home, you can afford to pay full council tax. That discount will be going. There is some work going on single persons discount, and I want to be really explicitly clear. If you are entitled to single person discount, you will absolutely continue to receive it. If you're not entitled, that entitlement is going to be taken away because you shouldn't be receiving that discount in your tax base for us. Not for us, but for the people of Medway. Paying tax is a very patriotic thing to do, and I'm proud of this place, and I want everybody who's got to pay their tax to do so appropriately. So if you're claiming that currently and you shouldn't be, you might want to think about writing to the council tomorrow morning to ask that to be taken off. We're also going to be coming more in line with court costs where we do end up in those regrettable situations. We never want to take people to court, but when we do, we have a set figure of the court costs that we bring forward. We are much lower than most other councils in Kent. We're doing a bit of a catch-up there as well. So again, we only end up in court in very challenging circumstances, but it is right and appropriate that the rest of the taxpayers are not supplementing that process, which is effectively what's happening now. Of course, between now and February the 29th, there will be a lot more conversation. So as a cabinet, we've got 3 very clear individual directorate meetings coming. We have a cabinet and corporate management team meeting scheduled for the early new year. So again, we're being really transparent about the process we're going through, perhaps unlike previous administrations who had a star chamber which effectively didn't actually exist according to the Constitution. So we're being open and transparent. And again, this will be a difficult process. I'd make no light of that. We will get through this because that's what we have to do, and that's what the people of Medway voted for on May the 4th, a responsible council that will get to a balanced book of finances when it comes to bringing forward the budget. Happy to take contributions from colleagues at that point, because again, some colleagues may wish to comment, but as I say, this is a challenging set of circumstances, and so we look forward to hearing, particularly from ONS, recognising the challenges and limitations they have, because we haven't got all the facts at this point ourselves. Teresa.
Yeah, thank you, Vince. And I think it's important that we send a message to everybody in Medway about reciprocity on the issue of single-person discount. If circumstances in life change and you're not living on your own anymore, it's only right and proper with honesty and integrity to report that to the council so that you're not getting a benefit that you're not entitled to. And if life changes the other way and you become single, absolutely, we want to support you and make sure you get the discount that you're entitled to. So it's about us being fair with everybody and sending a message that we want people to be fair with the council and the public money that's being spent. In the report, I wanted to draw attention to 7.11, again about adult social care, because as part of the budget going forward, we're looking at things in a different way. You can see that the staff are working on right-sizing the workforce, that there's a huge amount of work going on in terms of trying to limit the amount of interim and agency workers that we've got, and we're turning some success with that already, with a very, very determined effort and an extremely challenging market, and continuing to explore the redevelopment of a business case to do some of our own service delivery and investment. And today, when we were talking to SIPFA, I made it clear that I want to see from their work a way of representing how investment can actually turn long-term savings into reality. So instead of talking about it, how do we model the fact that the way we work and the investment we make actually saves money in the long run? And I'm really pleased that in this paper that the start of that is there, and I hope it will characterise our very first budget, which it will be in February.
Thank you, Teresa. Any other colleague? No, like I say, obviously this is the start of a process, and certainly we look forward to hearing from the scrutiny committees as they go forward, but recognise the frustrations that they have, because we've had them in the past. Colleagues content with the recommendations as laid out in paragraph 1? Thank you very much. That's for now, the end of the finances. We've got a bit more of the monitoring at the end. So we're going to move to item number 7, which is the Kent and Medway Domestic Abuse Strategy 24 to 29. Teresa, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Vince, and we gave notice about this. I want people to remember, please, that the domestic abuse strategy is commissioned. It's commissioned through Public Health, and I thank all of the team for the tremendous work that they have done on this, because it's so important to make sure that we support victims of domestic abuse and actually that we try to change the attitude of perpetrators, which is why I was very pleased today to play our part in celebrating White Ribbon Day, which is coming on the 25th of November. The focus for White Ribbon Day this year is not just on domestic abuse, but it's on challenging the perpetrators and changing the behaviour of men towards women. I always accept that men can be victims of domestic abuse too, but overwhelmingly the numbers show that women are victims of domestic abuse. And we've got some really good joint work going across Medway. So this new strategy recognises the joint work that we do and acknowledges all the things that we need to do, as well as delegating authority to the Director of Public Health to make any changes that we might do prior to the publication in December. So with these strategies, they do sort of come back here three times, but I'm very satisfied that a huge amount of work has gone in, that we're working with all of our partners in the way that we need to, including the police, and particularly with the voluntary sector as well, so that those who are victims of domestic abuse can be picked up, taken to a safe space whenever they encounter a public service, and that we're very open about the places that people can go to get support. And I do remind everybody that domestic abuse impacts not just the person who's been hurt, but all of their family and particularly children's lives. And we're much more aware these days of trauma-informed counselling and work with children who, if they're not looked after, if they don't receive the support that they need, very often become perpetrators of domestic abuse themselves. It's incredibly important to be honest about that and to break that cycle. And this strategy, absolutely, with all of the workshop and engagement that we've done before, identifies the way that we can successfully do that. So I look forward to the strategy working. I look forward to White Ribbon Day. Leader of the council is a White Ribbon ambassador himself, and I know that you'll be speaking about that at an event later in the week, and I hope everybody around the table will support that, because it's important for all of us to be conscious and honest about what can happen if domestic abuse is a feature of someone's life and the way that we need to change it.
Thank you very much indeed, Teresa. I'll take Nashaba first.
Thank you, Vincent. Thank you, Teresa, for that introduction. I think I really support the report and welcome that this has been brought forward. I think I particularly want to thank officers for the hard work that has gone into it, and I was really heartened to see the consultation process that's been undertaken as part of this, because it is about getting this right and recognising, as Teresa pointed out, that those who have been victim of this are the ones that are kind of helping us decide and decipher what the future looks like and how we address it and how we stop this happening. This is such an important issue that needs to be addressed, and it's something that during the COVID pandemic, as an example, became very, very prominent. It's always there, but I'm hoping that we're moving into a direction whereby people feel that the support is there, that they can speak to people, that they can get the advice that they need, and to see us leading this strategically is really important. I also think that the recommendation as set out in the report is absolutely the right one about that cross-service working, because again, this is not something that you can deal with as a silo, and it impacts across so many areas of people's lives, and it's so important that actually the partnership that goes behind this and shows that joined up working. And there are so many areas where when we see that in practice, the results are far better than if this was looked at in isolation. So I just really welcome the report and think that the approach that's been set out is absolutely the right one.
Thank you very much indeed, Nashaba. Tristan.
Thank you very much, Teresa. And I echo the sentiment of Councillor Khan, and I would agree this is absolutely it's a very important report. And of course, it's over 2 million people per year in England and Wales experience domestic abuse, and the impact of that abuse can result in a range of negative and harmful effects on health, well-being and outcomes. And as you have correctly said, it can impact future generations. I know as a teacher myself, I unfortunately come across issues, similar and that have been expressed. And we certainly do give education and support to many young people that are sadly involved in some of those. Of course, those future generations impacts our attitudes towards relationships, parenting, self-esteem, and of course, mental health. So you're right, domestic abuse does impact the whole family, and I'm really happy to see that this report acknowledges the sort of wider context of that. And prevention and responses also within this report must both look at the immediate impacts which domestic abuse might have on an individual family, but also it acknowledges some of the long-term impacts as well. So, of course, our services at the moment, and with this report hopefully will be strengthened, both statutory and voluntary, will even work better to support our families and individuals affected by domestic abuse. And even in a financially constrained environment that we highlighted previously. I'm hopeful with this as well, we can continue to work to support and coordinate our responses in a good way. I know we have some great track record here already, but I'm hopeful that this can be strengthened even further. And just lastly, as Vince is a white ribbon ambassador, no person absolutely should experience domestic abuse, and I'm hopeful that this strategy and its clear commitments will work with our partners to prevent abuse from happening, to strengthen our service provision, and to make sure we are learning from the latest research and understanding of what works best to continually improve the effectiveness of how our services tackle domestic abuse across both Kent and Medway. And I know that with previous reports that has happened, and I'm confident that we can take this forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tris. Tracy.
Thank you. I'm really pleased to see this strategy, and in particular that it's listened to the views and experiences of children and young people, and it's clearly identified the impact that domestic abuse can have on children and young people. Children experiencing domestic abuse within the family home don't just face physical danger. They face emotional distress of witnessing that abuse, and then they've got to cope with leaving the family home, moving school, losing their support network, family breakup. It can have a huge and really long-lasting effect on their lives. As Tristan said, impacting their self-esteem, their ability to form positive relationships, their mental health. And of course, this can go on to have an impact on their education, on health, and on social issues too. Schools, of course, play a huge role in helping support these children through the trauma-informed practice and the wider support often offered by family liaison officers who can help the wider family. Of course, they've got a role in early intervention and in prevention too, and that's of vital importance. Particularly important is in educating our young people to break that cycle, as already been mentioned. I'm pleased that Medway's relationships and sex education curriculum, for example, is considered nationally as an example of good practice. And so I really want to kind of emphasise the role that schools have in the strategy, and I'm so pleased that they're mentioned in it. And I'm very pleased, of course, to support the strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Tracy. Adam.
Yes, thank you, Vince. I also welcome that strategy. Also to commend the partnership working which is going on across Medway. I'm a trustee of the Sunlight Centre, and I happened to stroll in, or I showed someone who was looking for a meeting that was taking place. It's a regular meeting, and on a Tuesday morning, it's a one-stop shop. And actually, the atmosphere in that was amazing. I was struck by the number of women there. First of all, there was a desk there at the front, and it's basically a one-stop shop for because it is mainly women that suffer from domestic abuse, and it's all the agencies there. They could go to like a desk within that hall, interviews with the police. They could go to another desk for to do with their benefits. They could go to another desk to do with accommodation, and so I pay tribute to charities which are making their facilities, meeting spaces available. I know that also there's an event in the Pentagon taking place this week as well, so I would commend people to go along there. And then just to say that I've been aware that since COVID, financial abuse has also come prominent to the has become more prominent. It is a fact that we men tend to earn more than women, and obviously since the actual pandemic, that's come to the fore because as men aren't directly bringing up children within their household, there's more chance that they're going to be earning more. And if families are not sharing those wage packets within the household, then it falls again to the woman to have to try and cope that from a meagre budget in order to make ends meet, and to suffer the finger being pointed at them that they should go and get a more well-paid job. Obviously, we men do have an advantage in that respect, and I think like within individual families, people need to take a hard look at themselves. And I like the fact that within the strategy, it's also about the perpetrator recognising perhaps some of their behaviours and where they can go to for help as well. Thank you, Vince.
Thank you very much, Adam. Before I go back to Teresa, I really welcome this, and it just shows, for the avoidance of doubt, that Kent and Medway can work together without the need for an elected mayor, first and foremost. This is a critically important document, and actually one which will save lives. That's the bottom line with it. One of the good things that this government has done in the last 13 years is actually bring forward the legislation around coercive control. I think that, picking up on your point, Adam, that domestic abuse is not always physical abuse. It's sometimes mental abuse. And actually, the point around budgets, if you listen to Kent Police when they've had some examples of coercive control, it is around financial management, the ability of one person in a household to even have access to any funds at all. So, yeah, absolutely, I recognise that's a positive change. And actually, Kent Police are good at that. They have brought forward some positive examples of that, so I welcome that. With any strategy of this nature, it's about what are we going to do, how are we going to achieve this. So on page 130 of our agenda, page 34 of the actual strategy, very clearly laid out. And actually, one of the things I'd say about this document, it is very easy to read. It is not full of bureaucratic jargon. Local government loves bureaucratic jargon. The police love bureaucratic jargon. It's not full of that. It's got clear indications as to, how are we going to make sure this becomes reality? What are we going to measure that against? Clear for people to see, clear for us to hold others to account to, and indeed be held to account ourselves. And as both Tracy and Adam have said, the impact, particularly on young people with trauma, that's something which 16 years ago when I first got elected, nobody was talking about trauma. They absolutely are now. And again, this is part of that as well. And the final thing I'd say is this, and I think this is a really strong document. There's nothing that annoys me more as a proud white ribbon ambassador when we see some of those tragic high-profile circumstances that we've seen across the country, ending in sometimes the worst circumstances. What you end up with is, what we need is a new app to keep women safe. No, what we need is some education to tell men to stop being idiots. That's what we need. And there's a good level of education within this strategy as well. So I really welcome this, and I look forward to seeing the outcomes over the next few years. Teresa, back to you.
Yeah, thank you for your support, everybody, on this. And it's so good to see that in all of the elements of our work, for the Cabinet around the table and for council officers too, there's a role for lots of different people to play, both in facilitating the ability to report domestic abuse and facilitating help. And unless it works across the services, it doesn't work at all. And absolutely, Adam, you're right. The voluntary sector play a huge role and offer an awful lot of very important support in a very concerted way. And Tracy, what you've said about schools, it's critical. The behaviour has to change from the beginning. And if a child has seen their mum being abused, that's all they've seen. That behaviour, frightening and traumatic though it is, becomes in the mind of a child without the emotional development to process it the way that things are. We don't want that to be for people in Medway, and you can see from the report at 2.1, we've had higher recorded rates of domestic abuse when compared to the national average, and that's very sad. So as much as anything, this strategy is so critical to being honest about that, facing up to it, and working right across public services and with all of our partners in the police, the NHS and the voluntary sector to shout out that it's not acceptable. It does ruin lives. It can lead to ending lives. And we don't want it to happen in Medway. So I'm really grateful for the support everyone's got. And I hope that, you'll all share the information in the document, because as Vince said, it has deliberately been written to be very, very accessible.
Thank you very much, Teresa. Are the recommendations agreed? Thank you very much. Let's move on to the next agenda item. Another example of Kent and Medway working together and not needing an elected mayor. Lauren, over to you.
Thank you, Vince. This paper comes at a really good time because, as you know, we were both this morning at the relaunch event for the Kent and Medway Business Fund over in Maidstone, which was a really great relaunch event. We were obviously representing Medway along with officers, but also joined by our colleagues and friends in the FSB Kent and also the Kent Chamber of Commerce, which was really great to see. So the Kent and Medway Business Fund, Medway's not been actively involved in this for, as I understand it, the last 4 or 5 years under the previous administration. But I thought it was important for us to re-engage with this because it really enhances the suite of support that we already provide to our local businesses here in Medway. And in working with KCC, like you say, we're actually, demonstrating that we can work together very well, despite very different political colours. And in this case, demonstrating a really shared and strong commitment to economic growth in the region, which I think is really, really welcome. So as I said, the Council already offers business planning advice and various grant schemes to help start-up businesses, but also to help existing businesses in Medway to grow. But the loan funds that will be available through Kent and Medway Business Fund are really significant and will just be a further boost to help Medway businesses to grow, whether that's through developing or expanding existing product lines, services or processes, and also importantly to help create new jobs in Medway as well. So at the launch event this morning, we heard that over 50% of the recipients who've been surveyed, who've received funds in the past, have said that they wouldn't have been able to pursue the growth plans that they were able to if they hadn't had access to those funds, to those loans. So the aim is really that in restoring access to these funds and doing our part as a council to make sure as many Medway businesses as possible know about this and can put in good quality applications, we're really hoping that we can unlock even stronger economic growth here in Medway. So by re-engaging with the KMBF, we'll be giving Medway businesses access to interest-free loans of between £26,000 and up to £600,000, which will be repayable over 5 years with no repayment requirement in the first 6 months. And there will be a simple 10% administration fee, which really just covering the cost of administering the scheme. So these are really favourable terms at a time when there's not really any government COVID loans kicking about. Businesses are really struggling to access finances to help their businesses to expand. And as we all know, interest rates are absolutely through the roof compared to the recent historical period. So I just really want to welcome this paper and encourage any businesses in Medway who are interested in knowing more about the scheme to go onto the website. It's www.kmbf.co.uk. We've got some cards dotted around the room. And do speak to me or the Economic Development Team, chiefly Sean Henry, who is our named officer under the FSB Local Leadership Pledge, because we will be very happy to advise you and give you support on accessing these funds. And just really welcome this paper and our very clear commitment delivering on the signing of the Local Leadership Pledge that we signed up to with the FSB Kent, and also our election pledge to create 1,000 new jobs by 2027.
Thank you very much indeed, Lauren. It's a real pleasure to be there with you today, and it was good to see Kent and Medway working closely together on this. This is something which is important to us as an administration, and actually, as you rightfully say, is a living example of actually that local leadership pledge with the FSB, not just being a nice certificate on the wall in a building most of us can't get into at the moment. It's actually, meaning that you're going to be out there with Sean Henry and other members of that team. And it means that those businesses in Medway can have that information firsthand. They can see the kind of positive difference that this administration is making, truly showing that Medway is open for business. Any colleague, any question or comment on that bit? Simon, please, yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Lauren, for this really, really encouraging report and the work that's being done here. It smacks of probably my favourite word, which is the word sustainability. And as you know, sustainability comes in three forms. It comes in the form of sustainable environment, sustainable communities, and a sustainable economy. And this fulfills all three of those elements, if you like, in many respects. It shows how the local businesses are being sustained within our community, which is so important for jobs and for people's lives and livelihoods, but also for longevity. The children who are growing up in the current schools now will have work to do when they come out of school, and they'll want to stay here and work locally. And the same is true of the students at the universities. This is for startups, so those students who got inspired with an idea to start a business, they've got the opportunity without having to leave Medway. They can stay here. And that kind of longevity that we build in, the forever community that we want to create here in Medway, is reflected in this report. And I think the other thing is that's really important is about eggs in one basket. I mean, you know, we have a legacy in Medway of the docks closing and the chaos that created for our economy. And this is the complete opposite. This is about spreading our economy and making it much more diverse and much more viable in all sorts of different ways and sectors. If the big companies want to come here, that's great. But actually having a lot of small companies doing a lot of really positive work within the community is much more, has a great deal of more sustainability about it. So really welcome this report.
Thank you very much indeed, Simon. Any other colleague? Lauren, back to you for any final comments.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll just briefly come in and thank Simon for his comments. You're entirely right. As a recyclable loan scheme, it's just a greater investment in Kent and Medway, and you know it does work. I was just looking at one of the slides that I took a photograph this morning. You know, over the lifetime of the scheme, which I think is since 2012, it's created 3,700 new jobs and also protected, they think, around 1,400 existing jobs. So there is a real legacy of success, and it's across many industries. I think a lot of the companies that have benefited from the loans in the past have been in manufacturing. They've also been in accountancy, in pharmaceutical, all sorts of different kinds of sectors. So it really is helping to diversify our business space here in Medway in a really supportive way. And in particular, you know, we do know that here in Medway, over 90% of our businesses that operate are small businesses. So the fact that there is a distinct program for small businesses is really important. Obviously, it's helpful that there's a one for the larger one as well, and we'll encourage larger businesses to go for it as well. But given that we know that that's the profile of Medway businesses, I think that support for small businesses getting access to the loans is really important. So thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Lauren. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Don't forget to take your excellent cards home. Give them to a small business near you. That takes us on to the final agenda item for tonight, which is the Q2 Council Plan and Strategic Risk Register. I'll just say a couple of bits in opening remarks, and then colleagues may wish to comment in their areas or not, if the case may be. Of course, this is a council plan which is not our council plan. We will be coming forward with our council plan in the next calendar year in 2024. But it's the plan we're dealing with now, so you can see the metrics that are on there. I wanted to focus in particular on the risk register today, because I think we're in a good place on that, actually, with the improved narrative. So you can see there with all of the risks, there's a Q2 update as to what's actually been going on to manage those risks. So taking the first one, for example, on finance, in Q2, we've written to the Chancellor of the Exchequer, as I mentioned earlier in the meeting, to say that we need to see a fair deal for Medway. And you can see that throughout the risk register. That's an improvement, which I think shows very clearly that actually we take risk seriously, and I thank officers for the work that has led to that improvement. So again, transparency and openness. As is always with the council plan and risk register, it will go through the cycle of overview and scrutinies as laid out in paragraph 3.3. I'll throw it open to colleagues. Nashaba.
Thank you, Vince, and obviously appreciate that, as you said, that this isn't necessarily the council plan as we would set out as an administration, but obviously it does give us certain measures that we have looked at previously as well when we were in opposition. I just wanted to flag, because I mentioned it earlier in the meeting, those numbers around temporary accommodation. So obviously those are currently showing as red because of the issues that we've seen. Now, We are still lower than the national average, which is good to see, and I know that certain, and well, not certain, many London councils actually are looking at sort of numbers in the thousands when it comes to temporary accommodation. So, you know, sort of between 3,000 and 6,000 to 7,000 is not unusual in London authorities. Obviously, in Medway, that is not necessarily the scale that we're seeing. However, all of this is within the perspective of what we've already have, our housing stock and some of the challenges that we've got locally. So actually, the pressures are not too dissimilar. I think, again, this highlights the point around this national issue and the fact that we do need to see some support from national government around this. Now, obviously, we're looking at the autumn statement tomorrow as a starting point, but actually there needs to be wider work. But I also wanted to give colleagues some reassurance around the work that's going on internally to look at temporary accommodation and how we can find a more strategic way to sort of bring this, bring the cost of this down, and also to support the families that need it. It is a really expensive burden for the council when it comes to temporary accommodation, but also for the families out there who are impacted by this, who are at risk of homelessness, who then have the insecurity that goes with that. And we are talking about children as well, who then, you know, we all know that not having a roof over your head or not having a stable place to call home can cause so many challenges, whether that be in education, whether that be in your mental health, whether that be in your wider health. So this actually is really a priority for us, and I just want to kind of make sure that that is noted today, that we are taking this really, really seriously. But there are some national challenges here that alone in Medway we won't be able to resolve, although we are looking at that very seriously internally. We would welcome that kind of wider national picture and the government to take this seriously as well.
Thank you very much indeed, Nashaba. Tracy.
Thank you. I want to comment on a couple of things under the outcome of all children achieving their potential in education. Firstly, on page 190, looking at our figures for persistent absence, COVID's had a really serious impact on school attendance levels, and while the great majority of pupils are now regularly back in school, for a small group this has been quite difficult to address. For children to do well in school, it's really vital that they have good attendance, and so it's really pleasing to see that these figures have improved. Persistent absence rates in Medway have dropped and are now below target and are improving at a faster rate than national levels. And I feel confident that things will continue to improve with our redrafted attendance strategy and attendance action plan, and with the first meeting of the joint Kent and Medway Attendance Alliance having taken place. It's taken a lot of hard work, and I'd really like to thank officers who work very closely with schools to secure these improvements. It's really pleasing to see the impact that this is now having. Moving on to page 192, our Key Stage 2 data from the SATS test that were taken by pupils in May does show a drop in the number of pupils who are achieving the required standard in reading, writing and maths. This is a key focus, which improved attendance, as mentioned earlier, along with a range of other measures that are identified in the paper, should have an impact on. The school's effectiveness team offer excellent support to our maintained schools, and it's worth pointing out that Medway local authority maintained schools had better outcomes than academies, and in fact our maintained schools did better than maintained schools nationally. Please do note, though, that there are an increasing number of schools that are converting to academies, and that these schools are not accountable to us as a local authority. Having said that, our officers work closely with many CEOs and head teachers of academy schools and with the Medway Education Partnership Group to support school improvement. And I also want to recognise the hard work and dedication of all teachers in Medway who are doing a fantastic job under often quite difficult circumstances.
Thank you very much indeed, Tracy. Is there any other colleague? Teresa.
Yes, absolutely, Tracy. I think it's important to recognise that in the report and to understand that attendance is so critical if children are going to achieve what we want them to achieve, and all of the support that we can give to everybody working together in that arena, including family liaison officers as well as teachers and everybody at the council, to make sure that we absolutely have our children where they should be. There is some good news in this report. It might not be laid out in quite the way that we would want to, and I look forward to the council refresh, but we have seen a higher number of people wanting to quit smoking, which is very welcome, and with a 57% success rate amongst the quitters, that is a pretty good rate when people give up what is a powerfully addictive habit, and we've got plenty of support for them in Medway. The other thing I wanted to draw people's attention to is the number of schools that are joining our healthy food work. That's increasing. We've got primary schools joining, and we've got starting to have secondary schools joining now. And there's several events going on in the next month where parents and other visitors have been invited to school to get involved with the children, making healthy food, and really embedding that in the food that's served at school. And for so many children, it's so important. Very often and very sadly, for our children on pupil premium, the meal that they get at school is their main meal of the day. And if that can be a healthy, decent meal, that's going to help their learning and help their general health and the health in all of their families. So I do congratulate the public health team. We've got 20 schools on that Food for Life programme, 16 primary schools, 1 special educational needs school, 2 secondary schools, and even in our alternative provision. So that's really welcome, and it shows a tremendous effort on the part of the staff going out there and getting schools to join up and giving them support to make sure that they continue to offer healthy food. I think in the future, when we refresh the council plan, we need to look at the way we measure things as well. There are some things on this plan that don't merit being measured every quarter because they just won't change. So I think we've got to be a lot bolder and more strategic, really, in thinking about the way that we measure things. Because, you know, when you're trying to change lifestyle approaches, you're not going to do that within 1 quarter or 2 or even 8. You know, it's more likely to be a 3-year trajectory. And although we need to measure the things that we do, I think we can waste actually quite a lot of corporation time and a lot of our time in looking at things that just won't shift in the time that the plan suggests that they do. So that's more work for us to do for giving real ownership and leadership over the council plan in the future.
Thank you very much, Teresa. Tristan.
Thank you very much. And Vince, I just wanted to raise some issues around, I know in the second section of the report, around page 200 to 201, just around our commitment to actually delivering on the green agenda, and specifically around parks and green spaces. Many people who live in Medway are always impressed with the green offer and the green flags that we've been awarded. But I think many people aren't aware of the significant amount of work that's been undertaken by our fantastic officers around expanding that provision. So I think in the public domain, you can see that we're doing some work at the moment on Deansgate in terms of the potential for that site. And I know surveys have been conducted, Temple Mill as well in Strood, where we're going to see a fantastic new resource. And even on some of our smaller parks, which we love, the Casenton Park, where there's provision for new skating facilities, Riverside Country Park, where we're looking at boardwalk replacements, Watts Meadow in Rochester, close to my heart. So I know that there's some excellent ecological work that's being done there. Victoria Gardens in Chatham, which is currently out for consultation. The Great Lions Heritage Park, where we've won successful for, as a site for entertainment, but some people might not be aware that footpath improvements and other things are happening there as well. And Beechings Way, and in my former ward, Luton Millennium Green, has recently been awarded £85,000 of external funding to improve the play area, which is going to be happening over the next period, over the next 12 to 18 months, and with a new orchard and access improvements. And I think all of these different parks, including some of the bigger projects around Deansgate and Temple Mill, is a message to residents that we are absolutely, when it comes to green, giving people that option to go cycling, to promote our green agenda, which is absolutely critical. It's the green thread that weaves through this administration, that we are committed to delivering on that. And I think with Section 106 monies and other support, I know Simon has been passionately an advocate for the green agenda in Cabinet and elsewhere. And I just want to thank him for his excellent work there. And this is being reflected in some of the projects that are coming forward. And thank you very much for the time that we're given. And I look forward to actually walking in many of these places and seeing the fruit of labours. And just on that last point, I just want to leave on a friendly note to thank our 22 friends groups as well, who are absolutely our volunteers, who are working, our litter pickers, who are working really tirelessly as well. We have a fantastic relationship with all of our residents, and they're doing a sterling job there. So whilst these reports tell us of a council macro position of some of these achievements, I will say that a lot of the positives in this are due to our voluntary sector and some of the collective working that we're doing in partnership as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Tris. Simon.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tris. Those kind words. It's not just me. It's a collective effort across not just members and officers, but like you say, across the whole community who are committed to this work. So it's a fantastic legacy, which is, again, one of those forever projects which I'm so passionate about. And I think just to mention very briefly, amongst those now is Town Hall Gardens, which has just gone out to consultation. So if anyone wants to contribute their thoughts and feelings about the future of that lovely green space, only a small one, but it's a crucial one in a key location. It's the link between Chatham Town Centre and the Great Lines. It's also crucial for the new developments they're taking around Garrison Point. I think the residents, that's their green space. They'll have a new play area there. And it's that area where, right next to the Brook Theatre. So if there's any outdoor productions of Midsummer Night's Dream, that's probably where it's going to be, hopefully with Herinda's support as well. So that's another one that's just gone out to consultation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I can't see any other colleagues indicating. So, look, this is not the council plan that we would want, but it's the council plan we've got, and it shows, good progress where there is good progress, but we're open where there's still more to be done. Absolutely right. And on Tracy's points in particular, although we don't run every school, every child in Medway matters. Not my words, the words of Ofsted, almost. So that's right, and it's great that officers are reaching out to those other schools who perhaps aren't part of the LEA family, but they're ultimately still our children. It's important, tonight's Cabinet has highlighted that actually, with all of these challenges, whether it is, helping small businesses to increasing the jobs, as we said we would do, talking about those green spaces, one of those pledges, one of our 5 key pledges. We're working hard on that. And some of the other really important critical matters. So some Conservative politicians might think homelessness is a lifestyle choice. This Cabinet, and particularly Nashaba, is getting on with dealing with the heart and soul of that issue. So I thank you and the officers in particular for an issue which has been highlighted nationally as a problem for local government, and we're trying to find the solutions. So, colleagues, are you happy to agree the recommendations as laid out in the report? Thank you very much. That ends tonight's Cabinet meeting. Have a good rest of your night.
Reynolds.